Hi, this is Christian Smith, and I'd like to go into all the instances in which I've contacted Justice Wood. In early November of 2012, I had contacted her, and the net result was a confirmation of a cause and effect relationship that took place in either May or June of 1992. After having contacted her in late June or early July of 2007 and had received those monetary damages and whatever ruling based on those views I did express to her, I did speak to an attorney afterwards, shortly after, and I had expressed a concern that I wanted to corroborate a cause and effect relationship because I believed that investigations would continue against me. So I did express that to that attorney. It was my feeling that if they were going to continue to investigate me, I would just corroborate this issue, in which the only way to explain the issue being corroborated and the version of events that unfolded would be for the FBI or Secret Service to say that I had influenced those actions that had transpired. Um, and that's pretty much the rationale behind that. Basically, um, it was my feeling that, to corroborate this issue, it would basically implicate the FBI and Secret Service. Basically, I told this attorney that there was an instance in which I received a call from a woman by the name of Mara Davis. Mara Davis expressed fear for her life, and I was unsure of whether to take it serious or not. Um, but it is my contention that because the actions to save her life can't be explained other than to say that I had influenced those actions, that, it would effectively prove some kind of premeditation on the part of the FBI and or Secret Service. I had some questions about how this person was put up to stage the threat to this woman by the name of Mara Davis. I think the FBI or Secret Service must have played this individual as a dupe. The only other alternative is that Mara Davis was part of a staged event in which she hoped to manipulate me into revealing whatever it was she wanted me to reveal on tape. As a matter of getting into why I believe I'd be able to influence this version of events, I basically believe that there was a wiretap on my residence within that time frame. So why do I think there was a wiretap? Well, the version of events that I had hired an investigator to uncover are as such. In the spring of 1992, I had an interaction with a woman by the name of Christy DeVoe that originated out of West Virginia University. How the events unfolded, I don't really know. Um, my guess is that it would have to have involved uh, faculty and staff from West Virginia University and possibly this Wheeler contact that Rick Wiles has. So there are two possibilities there. Uh, After this exchange with this woman by the name of Christy DeVoe, I had observed a report of an instance in which there was an attempt by the FBI to dig up an individual's grave in the town of Somers. And I also have a vague recollection of George H. Bush meeting with the then Pope, in which one of the two of them referred to me as being diabolic. That was real nice of them. In the following days, I maintain I received call from someone claiming to be from the Attorney General's office, and this person said something to the effect of there being an account of money and coming to his office, which I never did. I think I inquired about who to ask for and what the address was that he wanted me to go to. I didn't get a response from him, so I never went. In 2016, when the election was heating up, I was on jury duty, and one of the judge in charge of the jury duties seemed to direct questions to me that were very specific, like he had advanced knowledge of who I was and that I was going to be on jury duty. I did answer a couple of questions, but I wasn't willing to really answer all of them. But I was willing to offer up a recollection that in the month of May or June of 1992, that I was able to speak with Clarence Thomas. So I would assume that he did corroborate this, since it would be a phone call away. Now, for some reason, people in the Justice Department, the FBI, and Congress believe they will be able to justify repeated investigations of me by the FBI or Secret Service, which is pretty much a form of intimidation, I feel. And it's hard for me to understand how people in the public will deem them to be credible and sane for this continued targeting. It's kind of amazing. After placing a call to Justice Wood in 2019, where I spoke with her clerk, I shortly sent a letter to Senator Grassley and Trey Gowdy and Devin Nunes, basically requesting a hearing. And it was in this time frame that I had begun considering pursuing a lawsuit against Justice Wood for any biases. The motive of the lawsuit was more or less to depose her and make her answer questions, and not so much about suing her for money. So here are the questions I would like to ask Justice Kimba Wood if I ever get a chance to, or if anyone else ever has a chance to. So here they are. When did I initially contact you? What was the result of the contact? Did anyone contact you to tell you anything about me that caused a bias? Did I contact you on any other occasions? What was the result of these contacts? Did Justice Sweet ever contact you regarding my contact with him? Did he say anything that biased you against me? What were the results of my contacting Justice Sweet in terms of legal rulings or legal actions? Did I send you a copy of a book I authored? Did you read the book? Did your reading the book affect your ruling for monetary damages in 2007? In the summer of 2009, did you upgrade the monetary damages from 80 billion to 100 billion? Why did you increase the damages? Did any federal agents or healthcare workers contact you to tell you anything about me? What did they accuse me of, and did it bias you in any way? If they did communicate anything pertaining to myself, why would you increase the monetary damages from 80 billion to 100 billion? Did any attorneys contact you regarding my contact with you in August of 2009 after you had upgraded the damages from 80 billion to 100 billion? What did they allege? Did they think they had any Did you think they had any motives behind their contacts to you? Could anything have hit the media regarding my contact with you that would have caused motive for these attorneys to make allegations to you? And how did those allegations affect your judgment? Have any reporters contacted you as a result of my contacting them? What do you think the purpose of me contacting them was? Why do you believe I continue to advocate my legal concerns? If a person continued to advocate their legal concerns on the backs of an $80 billion judgment and a $100 billion judgment, what would be the reason for that? Do you think there could be a reason for me to be suspicious, to think that there was a probable cause for me to continue to advocate my legal concerns? Why do you think I was suspicious to believe that I still needed to advocate those concerns? If I contacted Ken Starr and he suppressed a wiretap, would that suppression pretty much imply that the original wiretap was baseless and possibly an investigative cover story, as I've always alleged? Did a federal judge from the White Plains District Court ever contact you and tell you anything that I had suggested to him? Did he tell you that he substantiated that I had a phone call conversation with U.S. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas within the timeframes of May to June of 1992? If he has admitted to it, why do you think he would have contacted me? If I substantiated the fact that my father's grave was attempted to be dug up, or actually dug up, and this news story hit the news cycle, would that be a reason why I ended up speaking to Justice Thomas? Are you aware of any suspicious deaths that are linked to me? How many suspicious deaths are linked to the Clintons? If there are more deaths linked to the Clintons than there are to me, would that make the Clintons a more reasonable suspect in any murders? If I should never have been investigated, what do you think the motives would have been to investigate me? Is it possible that the Clintons placed friends in the FBI and the Justice Department to run coverage for them and to cover for prior abuses of power that may have been committed by Bill Clinton and the Bush family? Why do you think the FBI is so unable to solve so many murders with connections to the Clintons or the Bushes? Is it possible that the FBI and Justice Department have been politicized to use against its citizens to intimidate into silence? Do you think there should be laws to prevent the hiring of individuals with conflicts of interest if they are to work for the Justice Department or the FBI in a capacity to provide coverage for former abuses of powers where they may have been involved? Does a federal judge have the power to orchestrate the selection of an individual on jury duty? Did I contact you in November of 2012? What did I contact you about? What was the result of that contact with you? Did you defer my legal requests to another judge, and what were that judge's legal decisions and actions that were taken. How much in monetary damages was I awarded? Did a permanent ruling come about to the effect that I played a role in developing a policy resulting in a treaty between two countries to bring about nuclear disarmament? If you were the direct contact person that resulted in those rulings and judgments, would that make you a relevant person to be deposed? Are statute of limitations relevant to a ruling that has already been passed down by a judge? Is there a law allowing people to sue the federal government for conspiracy? Do you believe federal agencies have the right to conspire against individuals and abuse their powers? Is there a statute of limitations preventing people from suing on the grounds of conspiracy? Is there a statute of limitations for a person to sue the U.S. State Department, the CIA, Bill Clinton, and George H. Bush, if there is an actionable claim to be recognized by the courts? Was a cause and effect relationship substantiated pertaining to a call placed by Mara Davis in the time frame of May or June of 1992? If a person became convinced he was targeted over and over for investigations because of a cause and effect relationship that's already been described, would it make sense to believe that that person would just want to corroborate that cause and effect relationship and bring it up at all future trials over investigations? And would it be reasonable to think that that person would continue to get wrongdoings? If there were more suspicious deaths linked to the Clintons than there are to me, and I was able to testify to a cause and effect relationship that would support all future wrongdoings for any investigations brought against me, would that support the fact that I'm being conspired against by the federal government? If it was proven that a Division 5 existed in the FBI and that they carried out assassinations and other crimes, would that prove the FBI to be lacking credibility in doing their investigations if they're actually involved in crimes, or that they even run coverage and cover up crimes other parties have committed? Why do you think a party would need blackmail information against a person? Do you know the meaning of the word brownstone? Could blackmail be used to silence a party to prevent them from uncovering something? If it were the goal to prevent parties from uncovering something, could that fact go to further support the notion that the party doing the blackmail was involved in other crimes that they're trying to silence people for? Have any Secret Service agents contacted you? Do you believe former presidents have the right to engage in criminal activity and should receive Secret Service protection if they are engaged in criminal activities? Do you have any opinions about the 9/11 attacks in 2001? Do you remember where you were when the planes hit the towers? Do you believe the official narrative presented by the U.S. government regarding the planes crashing into the towers? If an Israeli company was in charge of airport security and terrorists were able to board planes and use those planes as weapons, would you have questions in your mind about the suspicious coincidence that an Israeli company in charge of security was basically allowed terrorists to board planes? If motive was established that a party involved in the attacks was involved and part of the reason was to cover up money laundering, would that add to your suspicion? Is it possible that criminal factions infiltrated into the government to carry out their crimes under the banner of national security? If you knew all the facts pertaining to a case, would you be able to forecast an outcome for that trial? Are some prosecutions built around theories when no evidence exists that points investigators in the direction of a reasonable suspect? Is putting a theory together and connecting the dots an integral part of an attorney's job? Have I connected a number of dots together to form a theory pertaining to the subject matter I wrote about? Have you taken the subject matter I've written about seriously? Do you have any questions about whether I'm being serious or not? Can symbolism be corroborated and supported to build a credible theory to end up proving some kind of crime? If AIG was formed by Cornelius Starr to launder money and that was provable, would Ken Starr, being the relative of Cornelius Starr, be a conflict of interest when he investigated Bill Clinton if it were provable that Bill Clinton had ties to the CIA and their drug running along with George H. Bush? And if conflicts of interest do exist, should those issues be reinvestigated? Do you think people with immunity should be allowed to get away with their crimes? Do you believe everything you are told? Do you believe an unknown party might seek to control narratives to steer the perception of reality for the public? Are you willing to consider outside information when you form an opinion? Do you believe it's possible for the government to influence the media to shape their perception by controlling a narrative? If the government influences the media to control the narrative, would it be easier for them to carry out crimes that they propagate? Could the media be used to trigger wars if the US government had control over the media to steer perception? Do you have any skeletons in your closet that can be used to blackmail you? Were you fearful when I sent you a letter in November of 2012? Did you feel you were biased that you would need to defer my legal request to another judge? If a person was found to have links to multiple false flags and other crimes, would that support a pattern, and would that be reason enough to make that person with multiple links a suspect in the crime? If an individual named Michael Aquino was able to become a military general and ended up being at the head of the NSA, is it theoretically possible that Michael Aquino would have enabled other people to become employed by the federal government in agencies where they can exercise power and advance their common interests, whatever those common interests might be. If conflicts of interest were proven to exist where a party committed a crime and a related party were to investigate those crimes, would that pose a conflict of interest where the public might be skeptical to believe that a related party is doing the investigation of the party they're related to and they're reasonable suspects? If Vince Foster's grave was exhumed and workers found a body in that grave other than Vince Foster's, would that tend to support the probability that the person found in Vince Foster's grave was murdered? And if that is possible, would that lend support to the idea that Vince Foster too was murdered? If a person was repeatedly targeted, would that person targeted have reason to be angry with the US government? If former President Clinton admitted that he was grandstanded to intervene militarily in Sarajevo and Bosnia, could that imply that he's using the word grandstanding to say influence? That he was influenced to intervene militarily in Sarajevo and Bosnia? Those are Bill Clinton's words. If motive was proven, would that imply that the FBI and Justice Department have been politicized as weapons to be used against the citizens to silence them and keep them quiet? Have you corroborated my initial claim that I contacted a woman by the name of Deborah Durham, claiming to have isolated an issue of concern to that of the former independent counsel's office in the issuance of a statement to Maria Shriver that resulted in the initial ruling in May of 2001 to the effect that I played a role in developing a diplomacy ending the Cold War? Would that ruling be something that supports a possible motive by which George W. Bush may have used the FBI and Secret Service to target me for an investigation to discredit me and silence me? If it were proven that the CIA had direct control over the media, would that make it harder for journalists to investigate crimes that are deemed to have been committed by the CIA? Examples of such crimes might be the 9/11 terrorist attacks and the JFK assassination. Is preventing the truth from coming out a concern for national security? If I were to prove that the CIA had influence over the media, would that support the idea that the CIA is trying to use the media to cover for their crimes committed? Why else would they need to control the media unless it were to do damage control for their crimes? If the statute of limitations was 4 years to sue the FBI, and I had originally received a monetary judgment in June or July of 2007, and I received another ruling in November of 2012, would that make the statute of limitations irrelevant in terms of collecting on those monetary damages? If it was provable that the CIA had engaged in numerous crimes and false flags, and the FBI could not bring charges and uncover any evidence, would that prove that the FBI is incompetent in doing their job in investigating, or that they have conflicts of interest or biases? are biases supposed to enter into the minds of FBI agents when they investigate something such as the JFK assassination or the 9/11 terrorist attacks? I mean, nowhere in the job description of an FBI agent does it say you must be fully devoted to the US government and believe everything they say and ignore basic facts. Should corruption be allowed to exist in a government if bad actors were abusing their powers to reap financial gain? Do you expect not giving me the monetary damages awarded to me is going to prevent me from being silenced and speaking out? Is it possible that the media is trying to engage in censorship to silence me from people hearing my version of events, to hinder me from possibly hiring an attorney? Can you explain the RICO statute? If a criminal syndicate was proven to exist in the US government, would that be a basis for investigating those related parties under the RICO statute? If 3 brokerage firms solely handled the transactions for the US government, and it was substantiated that the US government treasury was being used to launder money through treasuries, would it be suspicious that many of the deaths that occurred on 9/11 were people employed by those brokerage firms that handled the treasury transactions? Examples might be Cantor Fitzgerald, Euro Brokers, and Garden Capital. If there were explosions heard by people, and there's videotape of the explosions and the sound after the planes crashed into the buildings, would that raise suspicion that maybe the buildings did not come down solely as the result of planes crashing into them? Is it possible there were other forces at work that sought to bring down those buildings? If buildings 1, 2, and 7 fell in the same symmetric manner, would visual evidence and expert testimony be used to further support the notion that they were demolished to further an investigation? If gold went missing that was placed in the Twin Towers in the basement, would that be considered suspicious if it went missing on the day of the terrorist attacks or before? How would the US government be able to clear governmental securities without verification of ownership and regulatory burdens? Would a declaration of a state of emergency allow for these securities to be cleared? If people discovered potential fraud at Marsh & McLennan regarding the Silverstream software and were granted a hearing on September 11th regarding the fraud, would it be suspicious that all of those people attending the hearing regarding the Silverstream software all died as a result of the attacks? If suspicious transfers took place on 9/11 while the attacks were occurring and they originated from the Twin Towers, would that cause you to be suspicious about circumstances surrounding the 9/11 attacks? Would the fact that the Silverstream software facilitated the transactions be worth looking into? If Cornelius Starr, the uncle of Ken Starr, founded AIG, and it was proven that AIG was involved in money laundering with the CIA, would that pose a conflict of interest for Ken Starr to have previously investigated Bill Clinton and the Clinton administration. If Frank Carlucci was head of the Carlyle Group and met with the brother of Osama bin Laden, would that be worth looking into? Could it remotely be suspicious? Would the use of anthrax that came from a strain that only the US Army had control over be considered suspicious if the anthrax was used to send threats of intimidation to silence people who were speaking out about the many anomalies regarding the 9/11 attacks? And if only the US Army had control over this strain and access to it, and it was proven they would have to have had been the ones behind the anthrax threat, could that in theory support the fact that the Central Intelligence Agency was behind the 9/11 attacks? If John O'Neill, who worked for the FBI and was attempting to investigate how terrorists were allowed to come into the country without any burdens or resistance, and he later took a job at Kroll Associations a week before the terrorist attacks, would that be a reasonable suspicion to think maybe he got the job there because the plan was to silence him based on his investigation? Now everybody is questioning it. Are they going to kill just about everyone? I mean, what's the point in killing one person over an investigation if now everyone is suspicious of it? Why would the CIA and FEMA be allowed to take evidence away from a crime scene if the CIA should have been considered a reasonable suspect in those crimes? If Larry Silverstein were to use the phrase "pull it," which is a phrase to describe the initiation of a demolition, would that support the idea that Building 7 came down as a result of a controlled implosion? What right does an owner of a building have to bring down a building and demolish it if it has tenants currently? If the CIA was a tenant in the Building 7, is it theoretically possible that the CIA and Larry Silverstein orchestrated the implosion of Building 7 because the plan was to get rid of evidence that was in Building 7 in the CIA's custody? Why would nanothermite be present in dust from the Twin Towers? If nanothermite was used to melt steel and cause the collapse of the Twin Towers, would this be a reason why nanothermite would be found in dust particles? If Jim Pierce, a cousin of the Bushes, had a meeting with many others that was to take place in the Twin Towers, and the location of the meeting was changed and only Jim Pierce knew about the change of the location, could that be considered suspicious if everyone else went to the original location of the meeting where it was supposed to be held and ended up dying? That sounds rather suspicious to me. Possibly worth investigating. If there are a large number of coincidences, would that be a reason to be alarmed by the anomalies surrounding the 9/11 attack? If a hijacker's passport was found unscathed in the vicinity of the Twin Towers, no burn marks, no damage to the passport, would that be considered suspicious? Could it lend support to the idea that it was planted there? As if somebody wanted to make it look like the towers were brought down by planes crashing into a building. I don't know, kind of suspicious. If there were a number of conflicts of interest in an investigation and many suspicious anomalies were overlooked by the FBI, would that make the FBI incompetent and incapable of conducting a valid investigation? If a BBC reporter reported the fact that Building 7 had imploded and they reported it before the actual building did implode, could that imply that that reporter and people at BBC had advanced knowledge of the fact that the building was to be demolished and that there was foreplanning on the part of Larry Silverstein and possibly one of Larry Silverstein's tenants, the Central Intelligence Agency, I think that's the name of them. Do you have any knowledge of the fact that federal agents coached any health professionals as to what to ask me? Have any federal agents been in contact with you about anything they picked up on a wiretap? Why do you think the FBI is unable to solve so many suspicious murders that are linked to politicians? Did Roger Stone or Robert Steele contact you with regards to my contacts with them? And if so, what have they expressed to you? Do you have any loyalty to the federal government because you are a federal judge? If a key element like Bush family having connections to the Bin Laden family were overlooked, would that imply that the Mockingbird media is trying to steer the public's attention away from a key link? If the Bush family had links to the Hinckleys, and one of the Hinckleys was deemed to have been involved in the attempted assassination of former President Ronald Reagan, and all of the media were to ignore that link, never speak of it, would that raise suspicion in your mind that the media runs coverage for politically connected politicians and people of influence? How many links are needed to be supported for that common thread to become a suspect in the murders of those with evidence of crimes being committed? Should politicians get preferential treatment when they are suspects in crimes? If the Clintons claimed a right-wing conspiracy against them, when in fact they had the coverage of the Bush family, would that make their claims of a right-wing conspiracy kind of incredulous? Did Justice Sweet tell you I tricked you into your legal ruling that occurred in late June or early July of 2007? Would any judge bring about a ruling that increased my monetary damages to the amount of $3.2 trillion if you believed you were tricked? If it were provable that the front companies of the CIA supported the enemy of the United States, would that imply that the CIA is controlled by enemies of the state? and could be blackmailed. I mean, if they're using blackmail, they could certainly be blackmailed. I mean, duh. If patterns were corroborated, showing foreknowledge of attacks that uh, dragged us into war, um, would that be a reason for appealing the act that created the CIA? When I contacted you in the summer of 2009, after you raised the monetary damages from 80 billion to 100 billion, did I ask you to raise the damages again to 800 billion? And did I ask you to put the monetary damages in an irrevocable trust so nothing happened to the money? Did anything regarding those legal actions you took hit the news cycle? Did any attorneys contact you after the news cycle hit where your legal actions regarding my contacting you hit this news cycle? Do you always let what you hear in the public dictate your actions and influence your perception? If I was awarded monetary damages in the amount of 3.2 trillion, should that money have been put into the irrevocable trust account that I requested to be set up? If I suggested to you that it was a goal of mine to pursue a case turnaround strategy, would that be a reason for you to be angry with me? Is there anything wrong with wanting to consider alternative theories relative to something I was suspected of or investigated over? Who do you think is responsible for all the suspicious deaths that are linked to Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton and the Bush family? Would you want me to come into the monetary damages that were awarded to me in November of 2012? Do you have any reason to think I should not come into those monetary damages that were awarded to me in 2012? Would you forgive me if I said anything to offend you? Do you think my questions and your answers should be made available to the public, given the public's interest in the subject matters? I have questions for you. Do you think maybe I had a reasonable reason to seek to discredit so many people? Do you believe I have any reasonable cause to sue the CIA, the U.S. State Department, the FBI, Bill Clinton, and George H. Bush? If I wasn't targeted so many times for investigation, do you think maybe I wouldn't have had to address these issues and possibly gone on to find a reasonable job, making a respectful living? If the monetary damages awarded to me in November of 2012 were put into a trust account as I asked in August of 2009, I would have no problem in coming into those monetary damages. Is that correct? Is it your contention that I no longer have a basis to sue the federal government, given the multiple issues I could sue over, not to mention pursuing the hearing route? That's pretty much it. For the record, I did reach out to Joe DeGeneva. I can't pronounce his last name. Screw it. And Tom Fenton. I expressed an interest in pursuing a case turnaround to Tom Fenton. So if anyone wants to forward this video to Tom Fenton of Judicial Watch, that would be fine. I'd really like him to probe these questions I have for the public and for me. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to tag this video with Justice Wood's name and possibly Tom Fenton and 9/11 terrorist attacks. Thank you for listening. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm also on Facebook. So please share this video. Thank you. Bye.